Nail Soup. There was once a hungry ragamuffin who was tramping through the cold, snow-bound night when he saw a cottage whose windows glowed like the gold from a fire in the hearth. His feet were frozen in his rickety boots, and an icy wind blew through his torn and tattered coat. He marched up to the door and gave it a rat-a-tat-tat. Round the side of the door peered an old woman with a dried-up apple of a face. "What do you want on this God-forsaken night, beggar-man?" she screeched. "Only a simple bite to eat, and a warm floor to lay this old and crooked body of mine," he besmeeched with a smile. "I have not a smidgen of food, nor a drop of drink," she grimaced. "So you best be gone from my door, beggar-man." And with that she made to push the door shut. Quick as lightning, Ragamuffin put his foot in the way. "Madam, if you have no food, you must be famished. Let me cook for you," he smiled. The old woman was taken aback. The tramp cook for her? Mind you, being a lazy sort, it would save her going to the trouble. "Very well then, come in quick, but don't bring in the cold with you." She shuffled in, and Ragamuffin rubbed his hands in glee at the warmth. "Now, my dear lady, fetch me a pot and some hot water." With curiosity and suspicion in her eyes, she did as she was told. As she brought in the pot, Ragamuffin reached into his greasy pockets and with a flourish pulled out an old, rusty nail, and he plopped it into the water. "Now tell me," asked the old woman, her eyes almost popping out, "what sort of meal is this going to be?" "Why, do you mean to tell me you've never heard of the famous Swedish dish, nail soup?" "I can't say that I have, but it looks mighty interesting," replied the stupid old woman. Ragamuffin stirred the pot. "Now, my poor nail, he's been on the boil all week, and is indeed a bit weak. This soup needs thickening." He turned to the old woman. "Now, you wouldn't happen to have a sprinkle of oatmeal to thicken it up, seeing as you have no food, that is?" smiled Ragamuffin with a twinkle in his eye. There might be a spot of that left," and she brought it straight in. Ragamuffin stirred the oatmeal into the pot. He bent over and sniffed it. "Oh, that smells mighty fine, but it would be a feast fit for a gentry if we could add maybe some meat and an old potato or two." He looked at the old woman, and she, being very keen to impress the rich folk, vanished off into her larder. "Now then, Ragamuffin, I found us a nice bit of beef I had stashed away, and some winter potatoes that I brought up from the cellar this very morning." She paused. "Not that I have any food, you understand, just a few odd bits and bobs," she explained. In went those bits and bobs, and soon a delicious aroma began to fill up the room. Ragamuffin stirred the pot. "You know I used to cook for the king himself," said Ragamuffin as truthfully as he could, "and I have a feeling that if we could just add a handful of barley and maybe a drop of milk, why this soup would soon be as good as those that I used to cook for the king himself." Such talk of royalty went to the woman's head, and she ran off to fetch the milk and the barley while thinking, "All this simply cooked with a nail." Ragamuffin stirred. He sniffed. He tasted, and at last declared that the nail soup was ready. But really, if the king and queen were to drop by, they'd want a sandwich to start, maybe a glass of good brandy, and the whole feast served on a decent white cloth. The old woman agreed heartily, and went to do Ragamuffin's bidding. And what a feast they had, as the old woman, full of grand thoughts, ate a grand meal, and after was so tired she was ready for even grander dreams. Ragamuffin himself patted his round belly with pride, and made to get up. "Don't mind me, gracious lady. I am a mere tramp after all, and I am happy now to go to sleep on your hard, cold stone floor." He grimaced, as if his joints were aching, and the old woman felt terribly guilty. That would never do for such a fine chef, who has cooked for royalty no less. "You shall have my bed for the night." She made up the bed with crisp fresh sheets and plumped up pillows, heated water for the tramp to wash, and then let the not so good raggedy ragamuffin sleep in her room while she tossed and turned in a chair by the fire. In the morning, after a fine and hearty breakfast, she turned to the wily tramp. "What can I offer to buy that wonderful nail from you?" The old woman was desperate, but greedy for a bargain. Ragamuffin's eyes lit up. "Have you not got a little gold for a poor old man?" The old woman went to find her hidden savings, and she gave her savings to Ragamuffin. The nail was handed over, and the old woman could not believe her luck. Her neighbours would now be so impressed with her, or so she thought. And with a rag-bag of gold and a golden smile on his face, Ragamuffin, chef of the most royal nail soup and the greatest liar that Sweden had ever seen, went on his merry way.